This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Wednesday. It is July 17th, 2024, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by Eric Wilson. He is an agronomy manager with Wyffels, and we're going to talk all about the agronomic conditions that are currently taking place around the state, things that farmers need to be thinking about, and then we will also turn our attention to the Farm Progress Show, which is quickly approaching as we get ready to see what Wyffels has in store for Farm Progress 2024. But first, let's take a look at the closing market summary.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day here on Wednesday, we are joined by Kenan Layden of agmarket.net for our closing market discussion. Kenan, what did we see take place with the grains today?
Yeah, grains, wheat was the upside leader, up double digits in some of the contracts, while corn was up and soybeans were flat to slightly lower.
And Kenan, do you look at this as sometimes we see wheat make a move to the upside and it is able to bring some of the other commodities along with it? Was that the case today, or is there a reason for a little bit of support as well with the other commodities?
Well, ethanol number came in very high on corn. The crush was, the second highest for this marketing year, which was awesome to see that ethanol usage continues for corn. There was also a large wheat tender out of Egypt, and there was some Germany and France news that their crops may be lower than expected, and the Ukraine Ministry of Ag, released information their crop may be substantially lower than what the USDA. So I think this might not be an interrelated thing, but just a bunch of different news story providing some temporary relief to a market that seems to be pretty bearish given the supply and demand numbers that the current market is trading.
And of course, we're always keeping an eye on the wheat marketplace, even though we don't talk a lot about it here in the state of Iowa. But with those world events that are causing the price movement, what is the current state of the United States wheat situation? What are we looking at with the crop right now?
Spring wheat looking to have a large number. The WASDE released a number living up in North Dakota where we're kind of a spring wheat, one of the main spring wheat producers in the nation. The crop looks amazing all over the state, so can look for big spring wheat yields. And as the harvest in the winter wheats move forward, that Kansas City contract was larger than initially expected, and that Chicago wheat contract, though, was slightly larger than they had estimated, but not substantially so.
Let's go over to the other side of the ag marketplace. What did we see take place in the livestock complex?
Yeah, hogs are higher, which is good to say. Live cattle are higher, and then feeders were slightly down on the day.
And we're always happy to see any kind of positive price movement for the hogs because it's been such tough sledding recently. I mean, really for a while now in the hog marketplace, we know that. But this little bit of a jump up here in the last couple of days, is this something that we can build on potentially?
I would think, yes, it is something you can build on. One interesting thing that your listeners might want to take note of is that spread between the front month live cattle and hogs last week was as large as it had been. Cattle were traded at such a premium to hogs as a source of protein. So consumer demand is something to look at here. Looking at cheaper sources of protein, there might be some more demand coming in, at least domestically, for those hogs, which was a weak point previously. So if we saw some more demand coming in for those hogs domestically, that could be something that keeps these prices moving in the right direction.
And speaking on that very same topic, we had Jim McCormick of agmarket.net on our radio program here today, and we were talking about that trend in Argentina where apparently consumers are making that choice to step away from beef a little bit and opt for the more affordable pork products in their store. So we'll see if that continues to be a trend in other countries, we will keep an eye on that. He is Kenan Layden with agmarket.net, our guest here on Ag Matters PM. Kenan, what's the best way for our viewers to get in touch for more marketing information?
Yeah, check us out on the web at agmarket.net. There's plenty of links, and look for a broker in your area.
Thanks so much for the time. We always appreciate it, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you once again to Kenan Layden of agmarket.net for our closing market summary. Let's turn our attention now to the closing numbers, which can be found under the markets tab of our website. And of course, you can always visit our website at iowaagnet.com.
September corn closes up 2 1/4 at $3.98 even. August soybeans up 6 3/4 at $10.97 1/4. August soybean meal up $3.70 at $3.39.10. August soybean oil down 49 cents at $46.21. Chicago wheat up 8 1/2 at $5.39 1/4. Minneapolis wheat up 16 even at $5.91 3/4. Kansas City hard red wheat up 10 3/4 at $5.61 even. September oats up 12 3/4 at $3.24 3/4. On the Merc, August live cattle up $1.60 at $184.27. August feeder cattle down 7 cents at $258.55. August lean hogs up 37 cents at $91.65. August pork cutout up $1.40 at $102.07. Class 3 milk is up 5 cents at $19.79.
That's our ag market coverage for today. And it is time now to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. Up next, I will be joined by Eric Wilson with Wyffels. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
You're watching Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. In today's show, I am joined by Eric Wilson with Wyffels. He is an agronomy manager with Wyffels. He's going to tell us about all of the things that farmers need to be thinking about around the state of Iowa right now in terms of the agronomic issues that they are seeing, those pressures in their fields, and then we will turn our attention to the Farm Progress Show, which is coming up in August, and what Wyffels has in store for the show this year. Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined today by Eric Wilson of Wyffels. He is an agronomy manager with Wyffels. And Eric, we wanted to have you on today to discuss quite a few things, but let's start off with the agronomy side. Obviously, it has been very wet here in the state of Iowa, wetter in some portions than others, but there's some issues that come along with that wetness. And I wanted to ask you about green snap and root lodging. These recent storms, what does it mean for those problems?
Yeah, we've had some nasty storms, Mark, especially in the western part of the state and in the far eastern part of the state. Some of those wind events have moved through, and part of it is just an artifact of the growing season. We had some good early planting dates. Some of that corn was growing very, very rapidly. And unfortunately, when we're in that rapid growth phase, none of it is immune to things like green snap, and also dealing with a few corn rootworm issues on the eastern side of the state that's led to some root lodging as a result of some of those storms that have rolled through. So plenty of things to talk about with the growing season that we've had so far, Mark.
And as you mentioned, it's just been widespread wetness and a lot of standing water in places. We've had that consistent rainfall. So it could set up for a nice later part of the growing season if we continue to get those timely rains. But what have you seen so far just in your times and moving around and getting out and seeing some of this damage that has taken place? I know it's hard to get that full damage estimate, but what's kind of the picture been for you?
Yeah, we've been very wet since the middle of planting season or the beginning of planting season to beyond. I'm already starting to see quite a bit of disease develop in the lower canopy of this crop. And I know that people have been out looking for tar spot. I've been out myself. I've found a little bit. My county isn't one that's shown up in Iowa, has been confirmed. But as I checked this morning, we do have 10 counties in Iowa where they have confirmed incidents of tar spot. And that's it's not all in one pocket. It's kind of spread out fairly evenly distributed from west to east across the central to southern part of the state. So as we continue to get this wet weather, it's a perfect breeding ground to get things like tar spot and other foliar leaf diseases a jump start on the season, and something we're probably going to have to battle for the remainder of the season, unfortunately.
Is that just considered a hard and fast rule of thumb that when it is wet weather, it is ideal conditions for fungal disease? Do you just kind of take that in stride as that's going to be the case?
Yeah, that's generally the case, Mark. Some of those diseases can be temperature dependent, depending on if you're cooler or warmer. You can get a higher rate or incidence of one or the other. But in general, when we have wet weather, that's a perfect breeding ground for fungal disease. And more often than not, we get the temperatures we need, especially in the state of Iowa, for those things to get a foothold and take off. So for the most part, the wet weather is kind of the triggering factor, I would say.
So, as a grower, what do you need to be thinking about if you're thinking about fungicide application and that window that you should be looking for or the ideal conditions? What should they be?
Yeah, so especially in the case of tar spot, I'll mention first, Mark, when we see these perpetual rains come through and we have consistent moisture and high humidity in that canopy, especially now that that row has started to kind of close up, and we're getting canopy coverage out there in that field, we're going to hold a lot more higher relative humidity in that cornfield. And if we continue to get rains, it's going to keep that soil environment saturated. Like I said, a good place to get those fungal diseases started, and then as they progress up from top to bottom, usually within the canopy, those are the things that we got to be watching for.
And with
Um,
tar spot, the more I learn about the disease, Eric, it's always amazing to me just the short amount of time that a plant is receiving that moisture or has that wetness available. Tar spot can really take hold, can't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Tar spot in particular, we found it to be very aggressive. Opportunistic and aggressive is kind of the term that I use to describe tar spot. So it has a relatively short generation cycle. 2 weeks, it can replicate and produce more spores that can consequently move up through the canopy. That's why it's really important to be out, now as soon as we can walk out in some of those fields and get to scouting and be looking in that lower canopy to see if we're going to find any tar spot. Because if we're going to make those decisions on fungicide, we need to get the cart ahead of the horse on that one, I guess is what I'll say. We need to be making those phone calls now, just to prepare the applicators or whoever we're having do those applications to be ready and know that we need to move when the weather is fit and the timing's right.
You mentioned the tar spot pressure map. Where is that tar spot pressure located right now? Is it at random? And do we have a pattern, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Is it a cluster of counties or is it more spread out?
It's fairly spread out. I will say there's a cluster of 5 counties: Tama, Marshall, Poweshiek, Jasper, and there's one more in that immediate area where you've got a cluster of 5 counties. The rest of them are fairly spread out. And I will also mention that I have found tar spot in at least one county that is not indicated on that map right now. So that indicates to me that it's probably more ubiquitous. It's probably more out there than we're finding, but it's a matter of just getting enough boots on the ground and getting it confirmed. So I would say it's probably fairly evenly distributed from west to east across the southern 2/3 of Iowa for sure.
Another ever-present threat for the state of Iowa, you already mentioned it, but corn rootworm. What are we looking at when it comes to corn rootworm monitoring? What should growers be paying attention to the most?
Yeah, so last year in the state of Iowa, we were extremely dry, and unfortunately, that's really good conditions for corn rootworm to thrive, get back into the soil, the beetles, and lay a lot of eggs. So, what we anticipate is a lot of our hot spot areas from last year are unfortunately probably going to be bigger hotspot areas this year, just as that problem kind of persists. Already, we're finding with some of the storms that have gone through, Mark, we're finding some lodge corn as a result of corn rootworm feeding. We did have some warm temperatures, early back in February and March. And hatch of corn rootworm eggs is dependent on GDU, soil GDU accumulation. So I would say we're seeing probably feeding earlier than we normally do this year across some of the southern portions of the state, specifically southeast Iowa, east central Iowa, up into northeast Iowa. So that's something we're definitely watching for, getting a beat on what's going on right now with corn rootworms and feeding. It's important to get out there and get an estimate of the pressure level and get some sticky traps out so that we can make some better decisions for next year and how we're going to manage that pest.
So, Eric, I'd like to switch topics a little bit, but before we do, is there anything else agronomy-wise that you would like to let our viewers here in Iowa know about when it comes to what you're seeing right now, or maybe anything they should be paying attention for?
The two big things in my mind we've already talked about, Mark. Keep an eye on corn rootworm pressure, and tar spot is probably going to affect the majority of us in Iowa this year. So definitely something I would be out and be looking for, along with other foliar disease. That's important too.
So now switching lanes a little bit, we are getting closer to the Farm Progress Show in August. And I know here at the network anyway, we're selfishly happy that it's back in Boone because it's right up the road.
Yep.
So we're really looking forward to it. I'm sure you're kind of in the same boat with us there, but how is Wyffels going to be involved at the show this year, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so we're always we always like to make a good presence in Iowa. This year's it's kind of a special occasion for us with the addition of our Ames site that we've recently put up a new distribution facility right outside of Ames, Iowa. So we've got a lot of things going on at the Farm Progress Show. I guess I'll start first and foremost. Every morning at 7:30, we're sponsoring the opening ceremonies, so you can join us at the front gate. The ISU marching band's going to be there doing fight songs and the national anthem. With the Iowa site going up, we're doing a lot of PR around our Plant Your Independence campaign and serving those who serve, along with our partnership with Farm Rescue. So those are things that I would definitely encourage growers or people, visitors of the Farm Progress Show. I guess I can't assume they're all farmers, but visitors of the Farm Progress Show to stop by. Central and 8th is where we're going to be located. We're going to be talking about serving those who serve, our campaign with Plant Your Independence, our partnership with Farm Rescue. And then along with that, myself and some others of the agronomy team are going to be there for live interviews. I believe we're going to try and do a live version of our podcast, keeping it independent at the Farm Progress Show. And we're going to have some hybrids there on display. Just be open for customer relations, shake some hands. I'm sure we'll have some goodies that we'll be able to hand out. So we encourage people to stop by. One other big one I haven't got to yet, save the best for last. So during that week of Farm Progress Show, we are going to do an event that Wednesday night. We're inviting customers to our new Ames facility, our new Ames distribution facility. So we've got a few things going on at that. I think we're going to have some shuttles running back and forth from Boone over to it's just outside of, just between Nevada and Ames on Lincoln Way. It's on Lincoln Way between Nevada and Ames. But we're going to have family barbecue available. We're going to be giving out tours of our new facility, some show plots that customers or farmers can take a look at some of our products. We are going to do a live Cyclone Fanatic podcast. So I've got my Iowa State hat on today. I went there myself, so I'm a big fan of ISU. And I think we're also going to have a special ISU athlete guest available that night at our facility. So that sounds like something listeners want to be involved in. I encourage to show up on Wednesday, and we'll get you over to the Ames site somehow.
A lot going on from the team at Wyffels. And like Eric said, they always have a big, fun display at the show, and you can stop by and visit with the team there as well. He is Eric Wilson with Wyffels. Eric, thanks so much for the time here today. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll be looking forward to the Farm Progress Show just like you.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you once again to Eric Wilson of Wyffels for joining today's program. And that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media at Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And you can find our video content and previous episodes of AMPM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget as well our free morning, midday, and closing market podcast on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. Also make sure and check out our daily Iowa Ag Matters podcast. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. On behalf of Quentin Slater, Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.